Hola, soy Gosen y hoy os traigo un vídeo distinto. Hoy os traigo un vídeo de reacción a un vídeo que la verdad para mí y para mucha gente, en Twitter todo el mundo comentaba lo mismo, es hasta la fecha el mejor vídeo de Flesh and Blood. Es un vídeo que ha hecho un chico que se llama Gorganian Tome, le pedí permiso para hacer una reacción en español al vídeo y él encantado, la verdad es que está sorprendido con todo el revuelo que ha tenido el vídeo. Y como veis aquí en el título dice Flesh and Blood es un juego de lucha. Vamos a ver las analogías que hace y como lo comenta, el vídeo está muy bien hecho, no es tan chapucero como los míos, lo vais a ver ahora mismo, y él, que es un aficionado a los juegos de lucha, la verdad es que hace unas comparaciones muy buenas y muy interesantes. Vamos allá y a ver qué os parece el vídeo.
It comes as no surprise when I say that Flesh and Blood is a unique card game. So many games have created their own resource systems. Magic has its mana. Netrunner has clicks and money. One Piece has Dawn. Digimon has the wild shared resource pool.
La verdad es que de aquí de estos solo he jugado a Magic. Netrunner, el amigo mío Swan, que es el compañero mío de fatigas para ir a torneos por ahí, le dio bastante y el resto no sé muy bien cómo funcionan. Los míos a los que he jugado, que ha sido el Hearthstone, el Magic y ahora cómo funciona el Flesh and Blood.
And Yu-Gi-Oh! Has whatever it has. But Fab is wholly outside of these confines, where every card represents up to 4 functions depending on when and how it is drawn.
Claro, aquí nos estaba comentando de que una misma carta en este juego nos puede servir para tener recursos, para atacar, para defender. Es la versatilidad que nos dan todas las cartas.
More, Fab's unique draw 4 mechanic sets up a cycle in which your turn is only one half of the story, and your opponent's turn is the other half. This give and take, back and forth, give some to take some, is what most players cite as their primary reason for enjoying the game. That, and Prism, which it...
Claro, aquí nos está diciendo eso de que en el turno se distribuye entre lo que usamos de nuestras cartas para atacar como con lo que usamos para defendernos. Es lo que está comentando, de que tenemos ese recurso.
Just still a video I'm struggling to make, but one thing I do not hear often enough in Fab, and one of the things that really grabbed me right from the get-go, was this. Way back when I started, I told my friend Jake, my friend who got me into the game, man, this reminds me of a fighting game.
Tengo que decir que yo también cuando empecé cogí los mazos preconstruidos de Monarch. La verdad es que trae buenos recuerdos.
Will not say die. Here we go. This set, it's either for the reset or for the tournament.
One round away again. The tension. Miss sweep.
Como es, este es uno de los últimos Street Fighters. Yo me acuerdo de empezar a jugar al mítico Street Fighter 2 y así hasta el 5, que es de los últimos que ha salido. Pero aquí nos va a demostrar en el vídeo que es un auténtico seguidor de los juegos de lucha y las analogías que hace.
Punishes difficult range, the jabs, both playing the game, but both looking a little tentative here. But he doesn't want to let him out of the corner. That's the critical story here. He gets out.
Here we go. Big Bird with this pressure. Delayed B reversal. Smart. Oh, got one hit, but nothing out of that.
He makes it out.
1 meter spin. Fielding that B trigger bar again.
Oh,
that's another hit. Here we go. That's done. Okay, he's going to be able to do a lot of damage. He's not going to be able to kill. He goes for the reset.
Will be enough. Not enough. He's fighting for his life. It's a critical arm.
He's still in this. It's not going to kill.
He's got one more chance. This is his moment. UAE.
Whoa!
On a counter.
Bullshit! He jumps back. He ran it. He takes it. Bullshit!
In this
is
moment.
now your grand champion.
Menudo escenario que tienen ahí para poder luchar.
This is a sentiment I still maintain. Flesh and Blood is a fighting game wearing the cold foiled dress of a card game, and that's why it's so damn good. But let me break down my arguments. Fighting games and the FGC are also extremely unique. People dedicate their lives to improving at every core aspect of any given fighting game, and they are brutally unforgiving in their learning curve. A better fighting game player will always beat a lesser skilled one. Not only that, But fighting games also foster nigh-on religious dedication to their characters.
Claro, está diciendo de que contra más horas le eches a un personaje, pues más lo vas a acabar dominando, igual que en un juego de lucha.
Ryu, for example. I don't even need to show you a picture of him. You know what he looks like.
Todos
And
conocemos
he's
a
just the
Ryu.
star. An even better example would be Faust or Bridget from Guilty
Estos
Gear.
ya son personajes nuevos que yo no tengo ni idea. Target, sí,
Eddie
pero es de mi
Hordak
época.
or Sagat or Dhalsim,
Sagat,
Sub-Zero,
Dhalsim,
Fulgor, Mai Shiranui, or even
Tilerísimo,
Carmen
el
from Under Night
fútbol, creo.
Inbirth Exolatus. Yeah, that's a real name. These characters have had dedicated fan bases, in some cases for decades. There's an identity which gets wrapped up in devoting so much time to one character, which becomes a beautiful melding of human and game. Dhalsim becomes an extension of the Dhalsim player's personality. Professional players, too, have garnered a reputation for
Siempre me
real
gustó a
play.
mí mucho
Take
Dhalsim,
Tome,
pero
for
era
example,
muy malo
a
con el
professional
verdad.
Street Fighter player. He plays and is well known for his incredible skills as a Karen player. Or Daigo Umehara, who's as famous for his
Daigo, el
Ryu as he
mítico
is for his guile. Or
japonés,
Nage,
jugador de
who's
Ryu.
known for being the best Faust player in the world. A great one, who I love, is named hilariously Fab, who's probably the best known Potemkin player in all of Guilty Gear. Now, does that sound familiar? I'm just going to list a few names, and you say the first hero that comes to mind. Mara Faris,
Y nos comenta varios jugadores famosos de Flesh and Blood y los relaciona con unos héroes en
Matt
concreto.
Rogers, Majin Bay, Yuki Lee Bender, Hayden Dale. And those are just the pro players.
La Yuki,
Paul Timmy,
Lexi,
Go Again Gaming, didn't even say his name.
Levian,
Breezy, Tommy Fresh.
Michael Hamilton.
If you follow the Flesh and Blood community, you probably correctly identify each player and their associated hero. It's in the blood of Fab, this distinct association between player and game piece. A long-standing conversation in the Flesh and Blood community is that of archetypes. In Magic, we have aggro, combo, and control. Aggro is categorized by aggression, that being achieve the goal as quickly as possible through traditional damage-dealing means, whereas combo is to assemble specific game pieces that renders the game engine in a pattern in which the victory condition is also. Then, finally, there's control, in which the goal is to run either aggro or combo out of relevant game pieces, while presenting some form of hard-to-deal-with, inevitable win condition. Mid-range, while something which has become sort of a fourth category, is much like control, but faster. It wants to win the game somewhere in between aggro and control. The goal with mid-range is to simply have a highest density of value, so that any time the mid-range player goes to refresh their resources, on average, they will have higher value resources. These definitions work really great for Magic. Aggressive creatures are easy to define by their mechanics. It's easy to see why a 3-card combo is a 3-card combo, and control spells are also easy to understand. The triangle of competitive games revolves around offense, defense, and a mixture of the two. But they don't always fit very well. It's hard to say that Reinhardt is a control hero and Soldier 76 is a aggro hero. They may, prima facie, mind one of archetypes, but only in the purpose of terms. This brings me back to what exactly is a combo deck? Sure, there have been pure combo decks in the past, like OTK Viserai decks, though LSS tends to remove those from the format relatively quickly. And so then, combo isn't so much a thing in Fab as it is in Magic. Combo is usually a combo in a deck, like Channel Mount Heroic, backed up by a ready-loaded embodiment of lightning plus Force of Nature. This is a combo, but Briar is not a combo
Sí,
deck.
lo que se está refiriendo es que
Icelander
no,
has Frost.
el mazo de combo per se realmente ahora mismo no lo hay en Flesh and Blood, sino que hay combos dentro de mazos. Puede haber el combo este que se refería de Chaemon o el combo que te puede hacer Cano, pero no es que el mazo esté 100% enfocado al combo. Hombre, se puede hacer más o menos, pero bueno, lo que se refiere, por ejemplo, a un mazo del que habla, que es el de Viserai, que te stackeaba 10.000 rune chance y te mataba en un turno, ese ya no se puede jugar, porque necesita de la esqueleta que está baneada en clásico construido, pero bueno, yo sigo considerando a Cano mazo de combos imposible jugar a Cano. Midrange ahora mismo y gana una partida. O sea, casi siempre necesita de un combo, si no es con el ladder wildfire, con un par de blazing adders para ganar. Pero bueno, vamos a ver qué nos sigue contando.
Hex isoternal combos, but Icelander
Claro,
does
nos
not.
comenta de que Islander pues es un mazo de que te va a ir haciendo daño y aparte tiene el combo de los Frogheads con el Ice Eternal para meter mucho daño en un turno. Pero que es un combo que está dentro del mazo.
Win because of this combo so much as it's a tool in her kit. And what is mid-range?
Pobre Islander, como lo han dejado.
Mid-range control with slightly less blocking? We tend to call control fatigue because the mechanical goal of control in Flesh and Blood is to run your opponent out of their stronger cards in the early game. This sometimes takes the form of blocking, and sometimes, especially in Outsider's Draft, takes the form of presenting one's own damage. So, is fatigue really control, or another type of mid-range? Additionally, Icelander is considered a mid-range deck, and also...
Normalmente el mid-range en Flesh and Blood se ha considerado a dedicar una parte de tu mano a defender y la otra parte a atacar. Digamos un balance, ni ir súper defensivo ni tirarnos a la cabeza del rival. Por lo general, eso es como se ha considerado el mid-range siempre en Flesh and Blood.
Sometimes a control deck, depending on who you talk to and which style the player tends to favor. Icelander could be considered a control deck because she has access to many disruptive cards which make her opponent's attacks harder to use. But in Magic, that isn't control, so much as it's prison or taxes. I have often found troubles when I attempt to help players out when they say things like, I'm interested in Flesh and Blood, what should I play if I like Jund midrange? Well, not Rhinar, but also Rhinar, or maybe Dromai, or Iceland. And where I usually fall down on is, you actually just need to try a bunch of different...
Claro, un mismo héroe se puede construir de formas distintas. Eso también es una cosa muy buena, ¿no? Que no solo esté encasillado 100% en un arquetipo. Y contra más aumente el pool de cartas, los héroes van a poder disponer de arquetipos distintos y eso va a hacer el juego siempre mucho más rico. También es un rompedero de cabeza porque no te sale un héroe y no sabes qué es lo que te va a jugar. Pero eso solo va a enriquecer más al juego.
Heroes on Felt Table and see which one you like, because Fab is a fundamentally different game. And this is where fighting games come in. In fighting games, there is also this ongoing discussion as to what exactly is aggro, mid-range, and control. No one really categorizes a character in a fighting game as aggro.
Yo jamás se me pasó por la cabeza categorizar un juego de lucha así, pero obviamente la gente que está metida y tal, pues sí que tiene su sentido que haya personajes que necesiten más momento, más estar todo el rato pegando y otros que sean cerrar la partida en una combinación o más defensivos e ir pegando poco a poco. Eso es lo que tiene no jugar juegos de lucha desde hace 20 años.
So much as rushdown. Rushdown is a term which is used to describe characters who specialize in offense and speed.
Claro, aquí está comentando lo que llamaríamos agro.
Into guessing what they're going to do. Guess wrong and the damage
Lo que
piles up.
podríamos asemejar, por ejemplo, a Fai o héroes similares.
And typically poor defensive options. I actually like this terminology better for Fab than I do Magic's traditional definition of aggro, which is a little inelegant. Fai is a perfect example of a rushdown. He presents absurd amounts of damage, has really weak defense, and regularly puts his opponents in a position of to block or not to block. Taking a hit from mounting anger could be total doom, or it could be he banishes a blue card to attack for 2. That card in his arsenal could be an Art of War, or it could be Phoenix Flame. The most obvious signifier of a rushdown character in a fighting game is their total health pool. In Street Fighter, for example, Seth has one of the lowest health pools in the game. If Seth loses their pressure in the game, it can spell disaster, because Seth has weak defense and
hace la comparación perfecta. O sea, si este luchador tan agresivo tiene poca vida, si pierde la iniciativa, al ser tan débil va a sufrir mucho y lo compara, por ejemplo, con Fai en este caso, aunque la verdad Fai con las piezas de equipo que tiene no tiene una defensa tan débil, pero más o menos la comparación es muy buena.
Fewer guesses than most of the characters to reach neutral or parity. When you look at Phi, most of his deck is 2 blocks, and worse. If you look at
Claro, nos
Phi
dice
and
que la
Shank,
mayoría de las cartas del equipo que tiene Fai bloquean de 2 y eso a la hora de defender, pues claro, es un problema.
blocking with any one card from hand disrupts his turn almost completely. The next archetype I would like to talk about is that of the all-rounder. All-rounders are what they sound like. They are relatively good in most categories, but do not particularly exceed at any one.
Gracioso que compare a Ryu con Dorincia. Está hablando de personajes que van más o menos bien en todo. A la hora de atacar, defender, y nos compara a Ryu con Dori.
They have a decent mixture of offense and defense. All-rounders include Ryu, or Soul Bad Guy. All-rounders are usually the face characters of any given fighting game because they are good at teaching the fundamentals of any given fighting game. You will learn a lot about Street Fighter if you learn the core concept of Ryu's Fireball Uppercut game. Since all-rounders are capable of both offense and defense, they have tools for both and can focus in on one or the other, but not so much like Rushdown. I like to think of an all-rounder like Uzuri, who can put out impressive damage and defense. Disrupting Uzuri's hands doesn't work quite as well as it does against Fireball. All-rounders tend to win the game later
Tiene
than
buenas
Rushdown,
capacidades de
but
defensa
earlier
y
than the
buenas
next game.
capacidades de
Zoners.
ataque.
Zoners, the second least liked archetype in fighting games. Zoners are categorized by having a fundamentally different goal than the other two main archetypes. Zoners do exactly as their name implies. They control zones. Their intention is to keep the other two archetypes away from them with long-range attacks. They do this because keeping a fighting game character away from you protects your life total. If they can't punch you, they can't do damage. Zoners are typically, but not always, slower movement, have hard to deal with attacks, and sometimes even have traps. But
Con
weirdly,
curiosidad
they
con
don't always
que
have great
compara
defensive options.
los zones
Often, they'll have one great evasion
dentro del
move,
juego,
like Dawson's teleport.
o el
But they usually
sería
have lower
el
defense
dancing
than
del
all-rounders.
Flesh and Black.
So while they are not defensive stalwarts, they are often considered defensive characters. And this is because, as earlier stated, they are not intending to reduce life totals to 0 so much as they're intending to control the tempo of the game. Guilty Gear is a frantic, white-knuckle frenzy of a fighting game. Until you fight Axel, who pokes you and prods you and keeps you away from him with nearly full-screen attacks. Guile's defense is impenetrable in the right hands, and refuses to allow you to advance toward him on the ground by his sonic booms, and also denies your air access
El
by his
mítico
somersault.
Guile del Street Fighter.
His control of zones is
Nunca
usually
me
what
hubiera
players get
imaginado que era un
frustrated
personaje
because they
defensivo,
feel like they
pero
aren't playing a game
lo es.
if they can't occupy these two areas. And it's not wrong. They are not playing what they thought was the game. They are playing the zoner's game. And then, breathe with me, fighting game fans. Grappler. Grapplers also don't quite fit into an aggro, mid-range, or control category, nor do they really fit in the rushdown, all-rounder, or zone.
Imagino los grapplers se refieren a los
Grapplers have
que
many
te agarran en los
They
juegos de
sometimes
lucha
have great
y
defensive options, and
te
sometimes have
hacen
weak
una llave o
defensive
te tiran
options.
por ahí.
They sometimes have great
Mítico
offensive
tanque.
options, like Potemkin's completely bullshit Mega Fist, and sometimes have very weak offensive options, like slow, easy-to-read attacks. Grapplers also typically have very slow walk speed. They often have high health totals, and very rarely can they attack from significant ranges, unless you're bullshit Potemkin. The thing which categorizes grapplers best, though, is that of the grapple, the grab. Zangief doesn't have incredibly long combos. He doesn't have what are traditionally considered mix-ups outside of will I grab you or will I punch you.
La mítica
But
sala
what
de
Zangief
entrenamiento
does have
de
is the
Street Fighter
lingering fear of
para
this.
practicarlo.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, are you serious? He was bumping headbutting this dude the whole time. Look at the damage though. 50% up.
Grabs in a fighting game are a unique third category of interactivity. In a fighting game, you have attack, block, and grab. A normal attack? Easy. Block it by holding back. Your opponent is blocking? Great. Jump and kick them. Or strike low when they block high. But grabs are different. If you are attacking your opponent and they block everything constantly so that none of your damage is getting through, there is usually only one option. Grab them. Grabs can't be blocked. If a grab is executed, they will get their damage. While very frustrating for most players to play against, and me too when I play against Bullshit Potemkin and his Bullshit Mega Fist, or Bullshit Potemkin Buster, or Bullshit whatever else Potemkin has, grapplers are usually spending their defensive offense and high health pulls waiting for the right moment to reach out and smash their opponents into the ground. And once they do, it's time to start business. Now, you may be wondering who I consider to be the aforementioned categories, and I am here to deliver this theory. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments below. I am also only doing this for CC because I just don't understand Blitz enough to talk about it. Rushdown. Katsu, Leviah, Viserai, Briar, Phi, Lexi, Jane, Dash.
Estos héroes son los que él ha considerado que son de agro, de cuando dice rushdown, de héroes que necesitan todo el rato la iniciativa para poder cumplir su plan, que no se pueden poner a la defensiva o mezclar ataques con defensa.
All-rounder. Reinhard, Dorinthia, Briar, Bolton, Viserai.
Estos que ha nombrado son los que pueden alternar tanto defensa como ataque y digamos que están un poco más nivelados.
Zoner. Prism, Icelander, Dromai, Lexi, Dash, Kano.
Y estos son los que compararían con los zoners, como el Dalsin, los que procuran ocupar un espacio para lanzar desde más lejos para que no les puedan dar. Realmente lo entiendo con Prisma, con Icelander. Kano no me sigue entrando en esa categoría. Sí me entra Kano cuando, por ejemplo, estás jugando contra un mazo lento y en cualquier momento le amenazas el combo, que tiene que jugar con mucho cuidado. En ese sentido sí que entraría, pero por ejemplo contra un mazo de agro, que es una carrera, no. Y Das, como tiene muchísimos planes, tampoco lo entiendo muy bien, porque Das te puede también hacer mucho agro. No sé la verdad por qué lo ha metido también aquí. Sí que tiene la versión defensiva de Das, que se encargaría de defender y luego atacarte con la pistola. Pero bueno, vamos a dejarlo entre medias.
Grappler. Oldhim, Azalea, Bravo, and Lexi. And Riptide hasn't been figured out yet, and Arachne's card pool hasn't quite been parsed by the community, though I'm inclined to put Arachne either zoner or all-rounder. You'll notice, of course, that a few of the characters are put in more than one box, and this is to account for them being built quite differently. Briar is both an all-rounder and a rushdown. This is because
Sí, está comentando aquí de que hay varios héroes que los ha metido en varias categorías, pero se pueden construir de forma distinta. Me hace gracia que los de agarrar hayan metido a Oldin, a Zalea, a Lexi. Ahí se refería al Lexi de hielo seguramente. A Zalea cuando está jugando contra agro, que te puede encadenar Reading the Ledger para no hacer nada. Más o menos lo compara con los que te restringen un poco el juego.
Briar can be built Cheerio style or a beefier, make embodiments every turn and gain extra value out of my defensive card style. She can also pivot based on how she sideboards. Dash, as well, can be a tree frog or a wombat. One signifies uber defense and one signifies uber offense. I have never met a wombat nor a tree frog, so I will have to take the word of the deck's creators as gospel. I want to reiterate that any character in a fighting game, as well as any character in Fab, can be played extremely defensively. Yes, Phi can commit all 4 cards to block at return, run every defense reaction available, and ultimately be pretty hard to kill as a result. But it's clearly not what he's designed to do. Just like Chip, the longtime ninja in Guilty Gear, is not designed to be a defensive stalwart, rather a lightning-fast, offensive maniac. Every game is dictated by a prescribed flow by the developers of said game. While Rainbow Six Siege is a slow, methodical multiplayer shooter where the anticipation of violence is the majority of the experience, which is then broken up by a sudden collision of 2 teams, Doom or Quake are frantic, quick-twitch shooters. It's also easy to see, after playing both games, why someone would prefer one to another. Card games are no different. While Magic is the relatively steady accumulation of resources culminating in the 2 players playing at the peak of their powers in later turns, Fab is the complete opposite. Fab is us starting at peak powers and losing effectiveness over the course of the match.
Está diciendo que que Magic, ahí lo compara al StarCraft, donde los jugadores van acumulando tierras, maná, construyendo su armada con las criaturas que pongan en la mesa. En Flesh and Blood directamente ya te empiezas a pegar con toda la cabeza. No hay esa construcción para una culminación en la partida.
Sometimes. Magic is a lot like an RTS, or real-time strategy game, much like StarCraft or Age of Empires, where accumulating and caring for your valuable resources and when and how to use them is the game. These games are characterized by starting at nothing and slowly building up to a war machine. Fighting games, and Fab on the other hand, all moves are available at the start of the game. While yes, fighting games often do have a
Claro, por eso lo compara a los juegos de lucha, porque desde un principio puedes hacer todos los combos y todo lo que quieras hacer, igual que en Flesh and Blood.
Meter which players build up to unleash a ridiculously powerful super special move, I contend that this is a feature of the genre and doesn't contribute quite so much to the flow of the game as the box standard kicks, punches, and canceling those kicks and punches into special moves. What I contend then is the relationship of flow between Fab and fighting game is the concept of neutral. Neutral in fighting games is a term which means players are at parity. This is neutral. Characters are positioned in such a way that neither attacks can really reach, and in order for fighting to occur, one of the two will have to move toward the other. What happens when a player does this is, of course, the fighting. Players will fish for mistakes in their opponent, attempting to create the most efficient scenarios for creating damage while remaining relatively safe depending on whether the opponent blocks or doesn't block. If one player scores a hit, they now have the opportunity to maximize on their reward, spending as much resources as necessary to maximize damage output. They do this because once their turn is over, they return to neutral. Fighting game players think of their game as turn-taking just as much as card game players do. And what's weird about this is the idea of stealing turns. Okay, to explain this, I need to do a quick dive on some fighting game mechanics. In a fighting game, every move has a certain number of frames it needs in order to complete. A character cannot execute any other actions while this animation is occurring. Conversely, every time a character blocks in a fighting game, there is a certain number of frames for the block animation to complete, during which a character also cannot execute any commands. A turn in a fighting game begins when neutral is broken. The offensive player's turn goes until they commit to something which, in fighting game terms, is called negative, in which all the offensive player's animation will take longer to complete than the defensive player's block animation. Most combo strings in a fighting game end with some...
Como veis, estos son conceptos de juegos de lucha ultra, no sé si ultra avanzados, pero vamos, que yo al menos no los conocía.
Which is negative, allowing for the defending player, who is astutely watching their opponent, to either take their own turn or return the game to neutral. Turn stealing, then, sounds complicated, but it is really simple. If a player is taking their turn and then reaches the end of their combo string, they now must consider the defending player's offensive capabilities. Perhaps in anticipation that their opponent will begin their offensive turn with a low attack, the player will jump into the air and do an air attack. This is the original offensive player stealing their turn back because the cycle has started over. An even easier explanation of this is the grappler, who can steal turns with abilities like armor, in which they block oncoming advances, then activate one of their abilities with armor to push through offense, leading to a grab or knockdown combo.
Esto lo compara un poco, sobre todo con los ciclos de los turnos de Flesh and Blood, donde sacar ventaja. Los ciclos es la diferencia del valor que hemos sacado en nuestras cartas y nuestro rival, de cuando nosotros atacamos, ellos nos defienden y nos devuelven el ataque. La diferencia es se ve el ciclo del turno y es lo que está diciendo. Y cómo tratamos de buscar la ventaja o los errores del rival en estos ciclos de turno. Esto pasa lo mismo en nuestros juegos de lucha con todos estos conceptos avanzados que nos está comentando.
I like to equate this to Flesh and Blood in various forms, but let's do some of the easiest ways opponents can take and steal turns. Exhibit A, Spinal Crush, Tear Asunder, Crippling Crush, Crush the Weak, and...
Claro, todas estas cartas que nos ha dicho, nosotros lanzamos un ataque que condiciona mucho el turno de nuestro rival. Si, por ejemplo, Bravo le tira un español crash a Fai y no lo bloquea, Fai no va a poder jugar más que... o lo bloquea y se consume el efecto del crash. Fai no va a poder jugar más que una acción en ese turno, al igual que un reading de leye o cosas así. Entonces estamos afectando el turno, estamos robando al turno a nuestro rival.
And my favorite, pummeled CNC. Exhibit B, red in the ledger, hypothermia, channel frigid, snatch at the end of a 5-attack combat chain, red in the ledger again, mask of momentum, frostbite's the concept, barbed undertow, inertia tokens, and one more time red in the
Son
ledger.
todo cartas que
But there's
influyen
even
en
more,
el turno de
so
nuestro
they take
rival.
the forms of parries. A parry in a fighting game is when a well-timed defensive maneuver can lead to a more effective offensive maneuver. Parries, I contend, are like defensive reactions. This one is obvious,
Obviamente.
but this one will also do nicely. These comparisons go on and on and on. We could even talk about frame data, that being my theory that each individual attack within the math matrix of Fab actually tracks quite nicely to the fighting game concept of frame data. But I need more time to work on that, so perhaps in Fab Writ Fighting Game Part 2. Does Fab line up perfectly with every single aspect of a fighting game? No, not even close. There's an execution barrier in fighting games that simply does not exist in card games, but my contention is that they are not so different.
Obviamente, claro, dice que hay unas diferencias que la habilidad que tiene el jugador para hacer los combos, obviamente, es mucho distinta, que aquí no tenemos que hacer malabarismos con las cartas, sino los combos con los botones y las palancas, obviamente, pues son distintas, pero bueno, el fondo es lo que dice que tiene muchísimas similitudes.
Than one would think. I often recommend Fab players play fighting games and vice versa, whereas I would never recommend Magic players to play a fighting game, because they like magic. To enjoy a fighting game, one must love the dance between two people attempting to outsmart the other. Fighting game players, especially good ones, will very often say fighting games aren't about long combo strings, and execution is not the end-all be-all of skill. Being a skilled fighting game player is recognizing situations and what is best to do in any given situation. Fighting games have maintained their existence, despite market trends, for over 30 years, for three simple reasons. They feel so good to play. They are so pure in their gameplay-focused mentality, and they provide all the tools to get better and provide no excuse for blame other than yourself. So the next time you sit down to play a game of Flesh and Blood, maybe think about some of the shared DNA it has with games like Street Fighter. Hell, maybe give Street Fighter 6 a try when it comes out this year. I think players in both games would benefit greatly by dipping toes into the other, as the mentality is what carries over best. Alright then, time to go practice some combo strings.
Bueno, chavales,
It comes as no surprise.
toca jugar a Street Fighter para prepararnos mentalmente para jugar a Flesh and Blood. La verdad es que es un vídeo muy chulo, una idea muy buena. Muchas gracias a Gorganian Tome por haberme dejado reaccionar al vídeo. Espero que os haya sido interesante. Dejaré tanto el link a su canal como el link del vídeo original. Y que por lo menos os haya entretenido. Está muy bonito, muy buena la idea. Él, como aficionado a los juegos de lucha, la verdad es que muchas de las analogías y similitudes que pones sí que cuadran. Entonces, la verdad es que darle la enhorabuena por este pedazo de vídeo. Espero que os haya gustado y nos vemos en el próximo vídeo.